memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every tragedy should. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend. This is where your story ends.
All my rockets off. Alright, wipe. 2.2, nice.
Damage.
Welcome back, gamers. Sorry for the dramatic opening. I just really wanted to hammer down the point of Bungie nerfing Starfire into the ground, or in this case, straight into hell. Today we're going to be talking about the death, but also, more importantly, the resurrection of Starfire Protocol. Starfire's demise initially may have seemed permanent and set in stone, however, as you guys saw with the opening clip versus the Grasp Ogre boss, that's far from the case. Before I get into the specifics of the build, let's quickly recap what has happened to Starfire Protocol over the last year to catch everybody up. In Season of the Haunted, Bungie released Solar 3.0, which, believe it or not, made Solar Warlocks even better than before somehow. On top of releasing Solar 3.0, Bungie also reworked Starfire Protocol to take it from a borderline useless exotic to an absolute god-tier exotic. Full power Starfire allowed you now to have the ability to run 2 pocket nukes in the form of fusion nades, while also having the ability to regenerate your grenade energy through simply putting down Empowering Rift or Will of Radiance and doing damage to targets. The regen capabilities were through the roof, as it let you get back 20% of your grenade for every tick of damage that you put on an enemy. This included bosses. This allowed weapons like Wither Horde or even machine guns, such as Fixed Oz, to become powerhouses in fueling the Starfire Juggernaut. Additionally, with the absurd regeneration rate of your grenades, this allowed Warlocks to abuse Ashes to assets to get your Will of Radiance super in a matter of seconds. And not only were Starfire fusion grenades incredibly powerful just on the damage alone, but it also allowed you to create insane loops of damage with things like Demolitionist rockets. Here's a quick clip of what full power Starfire Protocol looked like. This is me defeating Perseus, the final boss of Spire the Watcher, in just 2 phases, by myself, just using Starfire. Starfire was one of the most powerful exotics and combo plays in the franchise's history, to say the least, and it dominated over a vast majority of D2, from casual play all the way to the very top of the endgame, and rightfully so, had to be reined in and put into place so it doesn't rule everything in the game with an iron fist. Starfire met a tragic end at the hands of Bungie a few months ago with a massive nerf, bringing down the regeneration rate of your grenades from 20% to just 2.5% per damage tick. A giant nerf, to say the least. At this point, everyone thought Starfire was dead in the water, at least from a boss DPS perspective. It was still usable in lower end content where you fought waves of trash mobs, but it seemed like it would be useless versus boss targets going forward. And how could you blame everybody? When seeing a significant change like that, you gotta think it's over, right? Here's a clip of what Starfire Protocol looked like post-nerf if you ran the same generic variant build, also known as just put on Starfire with high discipline and recovery, and you're good to go. Yeah, I know. That was bad. The last rocket swap there was kind of, yeah, that was scuffed. Anyway, just to add insult to injury, Bungie then releases a Starfire Protocol exotic ornament that finally makes it not look like a dirty potato sack from the 1800s after they nerfed the exotic. But the story doesn't end there. Starfire has once again found a way to creep back into the spotlight, and that's what we're going to dive into today. The first thing to talk about with this build is the fragments and the stats. Unlike the previous iteration of Starfire, your fragments and your stats actually play a very important role in maximizing your build's efficiency. For this new version of DPS Starfire to work, you'll need to build heavily into Discipline and Strength, and get Recovery as high as possible as a third backup stat. Discipline, obviously, for grenade recharge, and Strength for melee recharge, finally with Recovery giving you class ability recharge. Now you might be asking why those set of stats specifically in that order, aside from the obvious Discipline. Well, let's take a look at the fragments before we answer that. Here we go with the subclass. So, starting off, well, Radiance to Super, pretty standard, not changing anything there. For your class ability, though, we're going to be using Phoenix Dive instead of Empowering Rift, which is what the old meta for Starfire used to be. You pop your Empowering Rift, throw your nades, shoot your ammo, get more nades, etc. That doesn't really work on bosses anymore, at least not in the traditional sense. You could run that still in Ad Clear builds if you like, but for this build, we're using Phoenix Dive due to the fact that Phoenix Dive, when performed, will give Cure to your nearby allies, and that's going to come in handy with the fragments here in a second. Then we have Burst Glide, pretty standard. Celestial Fire, standard. You can use either one, Incinerator or Celestial, but I think Celestial is better due to just the range. Fusion Grenades, of course, in the nade slot. Aspects, Icarus Dash, and Touch of Flame. Pretty standard again. And then for the fragments, here we go. So we have Ember of Singeing for your class ability recharge rate when you scorch targets, which you will be doing with Celestial Fire, and your grenades. Then we have Ember of Benevolence, applying Restoration, Cure, or Radiant to allies grants you increased recharge for your grenade, your melee, and your class ability for a short duration. So all those three things that I mentioned with the stats earlier, that ties into this, as well as the Phoenix Dive. Then Ember of Torches, powered melee attacks against combatants, make you and your nearby allies radiant. Again, Benevolence and this just hand in hand, making your allies radiant or cured, which gives you a boost of energy again. And then you apply more score stacks to targets via Ember of Ashes. So that is it for the fragments there. With that said, it's important that you try to maximize Discipline and Strength as high as you can, just for more consistency with the build. Every extra tier does help, and if you plan to farm for a new Starfire, by the way, remember to put on a Strength mod on your Ghost, as Starfire is a Discipline-based exotic, and will intrinsically roll with Discipline through things like Lost Sectors and Nightfalls. Now, as for mods, those will go a long way in helping you shape your build as well, so let's go over those now. Starting with Helmet, you're going to want to put Ashes to Assets on your helmet, similar to how Starfire used to be previously. You want to use your grenades to give you beefy super energy in a very quick state, especially when you're not in a boss damage phase and you're just farming ads, just to get your wall quicker to pop it down for the damage phase. Now, I will say you could run 2 of these copies instead of how I have here, 1 copy and then 1 heavy ammo finder. That's totally up to you in personal preference. I just would like more heavy to drop, especially with double energy getting nerfed for heavy drops. So you could run 2 ashes or just run what I have here, which is 1 ashes and 1 heavy ammo finder. For your gloves, we have impact induction and momentum transfer, so causing damage with your melee attack reduces your grenade cooldown, and then causing damage with a grenade reduces your melee cooldown. You're just chaining them back and forth to each other to give each other energy. And in the third slot, we have Harmonic Reloader, just to reload your rocket launcher faster, or whatever you may be using that's also solar with this build. For chest, nothing special. You just have Harmonic Reserves to give your rocket launcher or whatever you're using more ammo, and then in the last slot, you could pop resistance for whatever activity you're doing that happens to have a particular burn, in this case, arc burn. Boots are also straightforward. You just put surge mods into your boots to make your heavy weapon do more damage. Again, in this case, Apex being solar. Finally, for the class item, we have Bomber in the first slot to reduce your grenade cooldown when using your class ability, Outreach to reduce your melee cooldown when using your class ability, and then finally Font of Restoration, because when you collect an orb, you gain an armor charge, and when you have an armor charge, you gain a bonus to recovery while you have any armor charge. And the reason that matters is because, well, for me personally, my recovery is not all that great in this build because I don't own a whole ton of great strength gear, which I have to work on. But that is the gist of it. That is the explanation for the mods. Let's move on. Now let's talk about weapon usage before going into the gameplay, hot swap loop, etc. For your main source of weapon damage, I do want to note that you can use basically any weapon you want that has Demolitionist on it. However, we're going to be using Apex Predator specifically today for a few reasons. First, it's craftable, which means everyone can get their hands on it relatively easily, whether you form Last Wish, or you can just buy one pattern each week from Hawthorne. Second, it can roll Demolitionist, which is the catalyst and like the lifeblood of this entire build. And in Apex's case, it can also roll Enhanced Demo. And finally, along with Demo, Apex can also roll the best damage perk currently in the game, which is Bait and Switch. For the other two slots, for people that were in love with the OG Starfire build, well, good news for you. Witherhoard makes a return for this build as well, still being a great staple. For your middle slot, though, you can virtually use anything that you like. However, I would recommend something that has lots of ammo, has range, and is quick to fire. My recommendation here would be something like a trace rifle or an SMG. And last but not least, you have your general gameplay loop for your DPS strategy. Now, previously, Starfire was pretty much, well, turn your brain off and throw grenades nonstop with some heavy ammo sprinkled in. This time around, it's a little bit more different and having to do more inputs to get your max damage out, to get out every rocket and throw as many grenades as possible. It's worth noting that Demolitionist does have a built-in very small cooldown timer on how fast you can throw your grenades to get your rockets out or whatever heavy you're using, and that does make a difference in how you approach your loop. With that said, this is generally the order your loop should go in, if not interrupted by anything, and also, you don't have to follow this step-by-step perfectly by any means. This is just an example being said out loud in case that helps anybody. So here we go. You do your Witherhoard shot first, followed by your energy shot, and then your first rocket. From here on, you will begin your ability loop as follows. You throw your grenade, then rocket number 2. Reload your rocket, then melee, then rocket number 3. Throw your grenade, then rocket number 4, reload, and then perform Phoenix Dive. At this point, you want to reapply your bait and switch loop, so after reloading, you go back to Witherhoard, then get back on your energy, shoot that, and then go back to your heavy. And then you continue with shooting rocket number 5, grenade, rocket number 6, reload, rocket number 7, grenade, rocket number 8, melee, grenade, and then finally rocket number 9. And maybe somewhere in there you can throw in another Phoenix Dive if you need it. Like I said, you don't have to follow this step-by-step perfectly. Do what feels comfortable to you. I just wanted to give an example. But overall, either way, I think this is still a very viable and powerful option for people to play overall. So in conclusion, is it dead in the water how many people think it ought to be? No, absolutely not. It isn't going to break the game like it did when it launched in Season 17 and onward, but it's still an excellent team-based DPS option in my opinion. And given that Season 22 might be, or is, solar-based depending on when you watch this video, it might become even more powerful through the artifact mods. In any case, I hope you enjoyed the video, or the build itself. If you did, sub today, leave a comment, maybe leave a like, it does help the channel and is much appreciated. I'll also be leaving a dim link below in the description with my socials for anyone that wants to try out the build for themselves. Aside from that, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Goodbye.